Secretary of State's office has two bill introductions, I understand.
Thank you,
Parker?
Mr. Chair. We have two bills we'd like to introduce to the House Committee. The first is 25 RS 375, which has to do with simplifying some business filings and allowing us to drop the fees for those filings.
Is there any objection? Seeing none, will be introduced.
And the second bill, also a House bill, 25 RS 376, which would require a disclaimer on certain types of solicitations that we believe are quasi-scams.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Bill will be introduced. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Next, we have William Wilt from Chamber.
There you go. Sorry about that. 25 RS 0135, the Cosmetologist Compact.
Is there any discussion? Which chamber, if you would?
House Chamber.
House Chamber. Thank you.
And then again on the House side, 25 RS 0164, Dietitian Compact.
House Chamber also?
Yes.
Is there any objection to the first two that he has announced? Seeing none, that will be introduced in your last one.
The third one, again, House Chamber, 25 RS 0165, the Interstate School Psychologist Compact.
Any objections? Any comments? Yes.
I apologize. Could you just repeat that? My hearing is having issues today.
Yes, it is 25 RS 0165, the Interstate School Psychologist Compact.
Any questions? Any objections? Seeing none, they will be introduced. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And the third one we have today would be Representative Christy Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to request a bill introduction for 0617, and it deals with updating the transparency database for economic development incentives.
And you introduce that in what chamber?
House.
House Chamber. Is there any questions? Is there any objections? Seeing none, it will be introduced. Thank you very much. Okay, today, on the agenda, we have the Secretary of Labor, Amber Schultz, to give us an update on the unemployment system rollout update and the overall agenda. Welcome.
Great. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members of the committee. Amber Schultz, Kansas Secretary of Labor. I'm here today to give you an update on the agency, an overview on the agency. I know there's a lot of you that are new, not only to the legislature, but new to the committee, so we wanted to provide that information along with some statistics about our agency. So if we want to flip that presentation over, we'll get started. And Chair, would you rather for questions just as we go or wait until the end?
That's your prerogative. If you want to wait for questions in between, we can.
I'm good with either way. If something's on your mind at the moment.
Let's go ahead, and then if they have questions, we can interrupt you. Thank
All
you
right,
very
thank
much.
you. All right, again, so Secretary Amber Schultz, Kansas Department of Labor. I've been there for 4 years as the agency head. Our mission with the agency is to provide accurate, timely, and fair information and services to our constituents, both employers and the Kansas workforce. I don't know if I'm clicking. There we go. It's a little slow. Just for your information, it is myself. I have 2 deputy secretaries. One is over what we call external services. She's here with me today. Amy Selm. She is over government affairs, workers' compensation, unemployment insurance, labor market statistics, and industrial safety and health. And then my second deputy secretary is Sandy Johnson. She's worked for the state for about 25 years within different agencies, and she's over our internal services, so information technology, human resources, communications, fiscal, and legal. Oh, and also we do, most of you already know Julie, but Julie is the director of our government affairs. She reports to Amy, so thank you. So again, how do we serve Kansans? We have 5 primary external groups that we administer. So unemployment insurance, workers' compensation, industrial safety and health, labor market information, and labor relations. And I'll go over them in detail during this presentation. A little bit more information about our agency. You can see that we have currently 419 filled positions based on a budget of 448. Our overall budget is about $238 million. Our total expenses are only 3.84% of SGF, however. Most of our funding sources are through grants, fee funds, and off-budget funds. And then I also wanted to let you know that we have employees, field staff across the state of Kansas in 83 states, or 83 cities and 41 counties. And this really has been a symbiotic relationship between the employees that work for us and the agency, because we've traditionally had a hard time filling some of these positions. And so by expanding our labor pool out into the rest of the state, we're finding very dedicated and very fulfilling jobs for these folks that pay very well for rural Kansans. So I wanted to make sure to point that out. So the first subject I'm going to cover is our unemployment insurance programs. Let's wait till it gets. So the unemployment insurance provides unemployed workers with temporary and partial financial support as they re-enter the workforce. Some things of note: it is a federal and a state administered program jointly. All claimants must be eligible and entitled for benefits. So for example, they must be able and available for work, thus must be monetarily entitled, and they also must have wages within a certain time period. Currently in Kansas, the maximum time to receive benefits is 16 weeks. And our agency administers all levels of unemployment insurance, from the initial claim adjudication to appeals and then to higher level appeals. Just for your information, the Department of Commerce actually administers all the workforce programs. That we are an unusual state in that fact. You might have heard that in November, we launched our new Unemployment Insurance Technology Enhancement Project, or UTE. So we're within our first 40 days. It has been transformational for our agency. It has developed a foundation that we'll be able to build upon for decades to come. Just some general highlights for both the claimant side and the employer side. It is a better user experience. It is modern. It has a modern look and feel. For our customer call center representatives, they can use a mouse. Before, they could not use a mouse. It was all old command line green screen. Because we have a modern system, we're more able to enhance our security so that those bad actors are more deterred and more unable to get into our system. And then again, because we are using modern technology, it's easier for us on the back end to provide better service. So our new system is designed to be scalable and nimble and ready to go if we ever see another economic downturn. This is just an example of what our new websites look like. On the left, you'll see that's what the claimants see, and on the right, this is what our employers see. So I wanted to highlight just a few things on the employer side. First of all, we as an agency are committed to servicing our employers. And in fact, just this year, we stood up the agency's very first employer services group. So we have our very first own dedicated set of staff, a hotline to serve our employers. Some of this stuff is probably nominal to you guys, but it's very important to our employers. They were able to retain their same employer account numbers. Their registration has been much more streamlined. TPAs or third-party administrators, which manage their payroll, are much easier. It's much easier for them to get in and manage their clients' accounts. And then there's been really minimal changes for the quarterly filing and processing. Employer contributions. So I want to make sure that everybody understands kind of how unemployment insurance works. Employers are taxed based on their experience rating. And an experience rating is essentially how often they use the trust fund. And so this trust fund is actually monetary reserve through these employer taxes. And then the benefits are paid out to claimants through that trust fund. And right now, as of the last fiscal year, our trust fund is one of the healthiest in the nation, the healthiest that it's ever been. We're sitting at $1.4 billion. And each year we have to certify the solvency of the trust fund. And this year we certified that the trust fund is solvent, and it's solvent enough to pay for 1 year and 9 months at the highest level of claims over the last 20 years. So think about during the pandemic of 2020, the Great Recession of 2008, 2009, if we were to have that level of economic downturn, our trust fund would be able to pay out at that same rate for 1 year and 9 months. And then talk a little bit about what it looks like for claimants. So one of the big benefits for claimants is that they're able to self-service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They no longer have to call into our call center. There's an improved claim status. So like modern systems, it has dashboards and statuses to tell them where their claim is in the process of the adjudication. If there's more information that's needed, or if we're waiting for a response from an employer, it will tell them that. So there's no need to call into the call center to find out what their status is. There's streamlined processes. There's modernized identity verification. So we still have online identity verification, but now we've actually partnered with the U.S. Post Office. So if for some reason a person is unable to pass the online identity verification, they can actually go in person and have their identities verified by the post office. There's tax and benefit management on their system. And then this is one big change for you all to note, is that now we are having claimants, they can now log their work search activity, which again, if you remember from a few minutes ago, is a tenet of unemployment insurance, that you must be searching for work.
Madam Secretary?
Yes.
If it would, now would be a good time maybe to have the questions on this first segment.
Sure, I'd be
So,
happy to answer questions.
Senator Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you very much for being here. I know that this has been truly an uphill battle in a big way, and you're making headway. Yet, I still have two questions. First, did we ever identify the true and complete amount of fraud and how much our trust fund was actually depleted during COVID? That's a great question, Senator. So we actually, through the UCMIC, the Unemployment Modernization Council, we had an external audit come in, and we also had LPA come in. So I think at the time, we had 5 separate audits from a variety of agencies to determine the level of fraud that was taken in. And I apologize, I should have been prepared for that question, but I am not, but I can get you that number. But yes, we did agree on the number for that fraud.
If you wouldn't mind getting that, and I imagine the committee would like to know that. And then I would also like to know if we were able to actually recover any of that fraud.
Yeah, we've been in an active recoupment since the pandemic, and that is a lot through our law enforcement partners and here locally at the state, but also at the federal level. So we work very closely with the OIG, with the AG, the Secret Service. We have cases with all of them. One thing I would like you to know, that while we can prepare and investigate these cases, it's not up to us to prosecute. So if we send them for prosecution and it's not chosen to be prosecuted, we just have to write that off.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any other questions? Yes. Okay. Senator Washer, you're first.
Whoever I am. I have a question that, not necessarily on unemployment. How many of your staff are actually in office, and how many are still doing it remotely?
That is a great question. So we have three types of employment with the agencies. So the first is in office 100% of the time. We have a telework agreement where some people are eligible for hybrid. The maximum that people can do is 3 days out, so they have to be 3 days out, 2 days in, but it's a very stringent agreement. And then we have field staff. And so those field staff are 100% remote. It's been that way since we can recall. It's just the way that their operation works. Here in Topeka, we have 4 buildings. So I would say, I think we calculated, it's like 80% of our staff are not field staff. So at one point or the other, somebody would be in the office.
Okay, and if I may, one more. Thank you, Mr. Chair. How are you able to gauge how much work they're getting done when they're home 3 days a week?
That is a great question. So within the telework agreement, there are specific metrics that employees have to meet, performance-based metrics. So for people perhaps will give you, not in their call center, so people that were working outside the call center, they have an annual performance management plan. And if they don't meet the performance metrics within their performance management plan, they come back. Not only do they come back, their supervisor comes back. For folks that are within our customer service, we actually can monitor minute by minute what those folks are doing. So we can see if they're on a call, if they're taking their 30 seconds in between calls. We can see if they're typing in notes. We can see 100% everything that they're doing. So if they are not performing to the expectations of my office and their manager, director, they are to come back into the office.
Can you give me an example of a metric?
Sure. So we would have workers' compensation ombudsman. They would have to receive and respond to a call within 24 hours. If they're not doing, returning an email or a call within 24 hours, we would talk to them, want to know why they're not, to address the issues that we're seeing. And then if they don't meet those metrics within a certain period of time, they come back into the office and are put on a performance improvement plan.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Representative Clayton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam Secretary, for being here. One thing that we've noted, I'm sorry, I can't find my S drive anymore, but if we look at this, the verification at United States post offices. I'm curious to hear how that is going. I have heard from a couple of constituents that they have issues getting to the post office sometimes. I know that from a federal short staffing level, we have issues there. So could you tell me, are you running into any problems with that type of verification? Have we explored any other options for those receiving those benefits to perhaps do some sort of verification at home with all of the technology that we have? Curious to hear that.
Yeah, Representative, those are fantastic questions. So I will admit, for one, when U.S. Department of Labor said that we are partnering with the post office to do in-person verification, I said, oh, this is going to be great. This is exactly where people want to go when they have to be on unemployment benefits, is the post office. However, I have been pleasantly surprised with the process. So it's very simple. When they do not pass their identity verification online, it sends them a barcode, and it tells them they can select which post office they want to go to. They go to the post office. They have 7 days to do it. They provide their identification, and within 15 minutes, a yes or no has been pushed back to our agency on whether or not they've been verified. The thing that I find the most fascinating about it is the people who don't show up. So clearly, it is a fraud deterrent. If you don't pass the online identity verification and it tells you to go to the post office, you're out of luck. And so we have a lot of statistics around that. Related to some of the online things, there are some states that use like ID Me, which actually does, like a video call. I've heard mixed reviews of that. Still being a relatively rural state, that would not, there isn't that equity in the rural parts to have that kind of broadband where you can do a FaceTime, essentially a FaceTime call. And forgive me, Representative, what was your third question?
And I think that the main thing that I think about is that in order to supplement my income, I drive for Uber Eats, right? And DoorDash. And they have you do a photo verification thing where you have to take it from several different angles. So I know that technology exists. Are we looking at something like that?
We've tossed it around. The federal government actually used that with ID.me, and then for a while they were, very against it, and now they're kind of swinging back to they're sort of for it. I would say right now we are not looking at something like that, and just we're waiting to kind of see if the USPS thing works out a little bit better. That was your question. Thank you. Getting to the post office. So again, part of a tenet of unemployment insurance is that you have to be able and available to work. So that would mean that you have to be able to go to the post office.
Senator Tyson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Secretary Schultz. I know you've climbed a mountain here.
Thank you.
Definitely appreciate your work and effort.
Thank you.
And I like the ability to be able to go into the post office. I'm glad that you're looking at alternative verification because not everybody has access online. So it's very much appreciated. Is there any consideration with melting this with the E-Verify?
Potentially, and the other thing I should have mentioned also is that Representative Estes had also put in a provision a couple bills ago to have your identity verified at a law enforcement agency, and we still do utilize that as well, although it's not heavily used.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the post office is obviously aware that do the local sheriffs and law enforcement know that they are?
Yeah, we do
aiding
have a
in
list of participating. Not everybody participates.
Okay, that would be my question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Titus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Madam Secretary, I wanted to follow up on the question Senator Owens asked about just when you don't get a prosecution to move forward, you just walk away from a bad debt. Do you use any collection agencies or other means or state set-off? We're not just writing that off because it's not prosecuted, correct?
Right. I should have categorized, I guess, some of the fraud that was taken out. Some of them were known bad actors just providing fraudulent information. Yes, we do have a variety of tools that we utilize to gather that bad debt. The vast majority, unfortunately, during the pandemic were international, and so we likely will never see that again.
Understood. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Senator Reichman?
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you so much for coming, Secretary Schultz. This question's been asked me quite a few different times. I don't know if you're the one that has the answer now. Undocumented people that are coming on in here, how is it they're able to work? Do we have the idea of how many people we have employed in the state of Kansas?
That's a great question. So we did just submit to both the House and Senate Committee on misclassified employees. And so we sent that, I believe, Thursday or Friday. And what you found of all of the complaints that we received, 0 were found to be undocumented. Does that answer the question that you're looking for?
So you're saying we have no undocumented people in Kansas?
No, I'm definitely not saying that. I'm saying that of complaints that we receive, that we go out and investigate the employer, 0 are, misclassified as undocumented.
Representative Corbett?
Thank you, Chairman. The question I would like to know is the people who are working from home, how would they be covered if they had an injury in their house? Would it still be covered under workman's comp or the state of Kansas or something?
Sure. So workers' compensation, and actually that's my next section, provides it's at no fault. So whether it is the fault of the employee or the employer, they would still be covered under workman's compensation. Of course, there's an investigation that goes along with it. So whether or not that would be paid out would be up to the investigation.
And follow up, Chairman. So the people who are doing this, we're talking about, do they all make the same rate of pay, whether they're hybrid or home or in the office?
They would make the same rate of pay depending on the classification of their position. So if you're saying I had a field staff worker in office for field staff worker in Hutchinson, would they make the same amount? Yeah.
Thank you.
That's all the question. Do you have a question? Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Secretary, thank you for being here today, and thank you for everything you've done so far. It's been a very long road, as a lot of us have talked about, and you took a job when nobody else wanted it. I can't believe you took the darn job. You were like the 5th secretary maybe that tried to tackle this, and you were successful, and I just wanted to thank you for working with the legislature like you have. And Julie, of course, too. You guys do really incredible work, and I just wanted to note that I was out in Spokane, Washington with the Secretary to receive an award for the state of Kansas for integrity of all things and unemployment. And it was because of the work of this committee and the Senate committee and the Department of Labor, sorry. All the work that we've done together, and it was really neat to see. So Kansas has one of the lowest unemployment, the shortest amounts of unemployment term in the nation, because we make people turn in resumes, we make people search for work. And a lot of times we get pushback on that from some of our constituents who don't want to look for work, but it is a federal requirement that you have to be ready and willing to accept a job. And just really appreciate everything we've all done together to make all that work. And if any of you have never been to an unemployment insurance conference, don't go. Don't go. It's not a lot of fun, but it was really nice to receive that award and be recognized. I do have a question on hold times. I know that you were very worried about making sure that we could answer the phones, because the new system might kick some people out, might cause a lot of questions, especially with the older demographic that has trouble logging into computers and all that. How are we doing on hold times, and how many calls are dropped and that kind of thing? Could you kind of walk through that?
Sure. Thank you, Representative. First of all, thank you for the very kind words. That means a lot to me and my agency. And I would disagree. Unemployment insurance conferences are fun. So I'm sure that what you've heard from constituents about wait times over the past couple of weeks, that really, it has a little bit to do with the new system. It has more to do with the weather. As you've seen, we were snowed in a couple of weeks ago. Our offices were closed. So people that experience temporary seasonal unemployment layoffs, this is their season. And then so with our office being closed for 2 days of inclement weather, and then for the day of mourning for President Carter, that just compounded, right? So we've seen a couple of weeks with higher than regular call volumes. Prior to a couple of weeks ago, we were answering 60 to 85% of the calls, with call times, wait times of in the queue about 5 minutes, time to resolution on the calls about 15 minutes. What I can tell you, well, 2 things. One, what we're seeing with the new system is that about 93% of our initial claims are self-serviced, so either online or within the app on the phone, and about 90% of our continued weekly certifications are also self-service. We do have 114 staff members, so about a quarter of our staff are dedicated to the claims process, whether that would be answering phones, investigating fraud, adjudicating those claims. And so I know and I certainly apologize for the frustration on any constituent level about the long hold times right now, where we're about 50%, but they will return to normal.
Seeing no other questions, let's move on to workman's compensation.
Certainly, thank you. All right, workers' compensation. So the basics of workers' compensation is to ensure that injured workers are compensated and receive the necessary medical care if they are injured on the job. It is completely funded by an assessment on every insurer's workers' compensation losses for that year, And this fund, unlike the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund, is actually managed out of the Department of Insurance. It does serve as the only remedy in the state of Kansas for workers' compensation settlements. So if you're injured, you cannot separately sue your employer. We also have first-level disputes, and we also have appeals that we manage within the agency. We do investigate fraud and waste in cooperation and coordination with the Attorney General. And then we also provide compliance review for accident prevention and worker safety programs that each employer should have. And then we have what we call our ombudsmen, who are available to answer any questions for injured workers. And then lastly, we hold the annual workers' compensation seminar, which this year was actually the 50th year of that seminar. Excuse me, just some statistics on workers' compensation, if the PowerPoint catches up. There we go. So we have investigated and worked 418 cases of fraud and abuse. Excuse me, our current docket count is 3,655. Within our OSCR system, which is basically the case management, we have had a total of almost 50,000 total filings, so that could be filings of evidence or filings of medical information. And then our ombudsman answered 909 individual records for correspondence. And I'll pause then and ask if anybody has any questions about workers' compensation.
Questions? Being none, let's go forward. Oh, Senator Tyson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a question. So you said that earlier you couldn't prosecute fraud for unemployment claims. Do you have the authority to prosecute fraud for workman's comp?
Sure, so that's in coordination with the Attorney General. So they actually do the prosecution. We have the investigative attorneys.
Okay, so they do it on both? They're the prosecutor for unemployment? Who do you turn over prosecution for unemployment, since you said you don't have that authority?
It would be the county in which the case was investigated. So if if it was here, it would be Shawnee County. If it was in Wichita, it would be Sedgwick County. If it was something that we were working with the feds with, it would be in the federal courts.
So maybe, Mr. Chairman, that's something the committee should take a look at, prosecution authority for you guys? I don't know. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anything else? Any other questions? Moving on to industrial safety and health.
All right. So the tenets of industrial safety and health are to protect workers and promote safe working conditions, right? We all want to go home safely to our friends and family every night. And these programs are funded through OSHA grants, and then also, as I mentioned previously, workers' compensation. So some of the things we do is that we inspect all public entities, so that would be schools, cities, counties, for safety and health compliance. We do also provide free consultations to small private businesses in the state of Kansas to help them with their OSHA compliance. We also inspect and permit all amusement rides in the state of Kansas. We administer the Safety and Health Achievement Recognition Program, which is for private businesses that achieve superior safety compliance. And we also host the Safety and Health Conference, and this year is our 75th year. Kansas was actually one of the first states to have a health and safety program. I wanted to provide a few statistics on some of the things that we've done in 2024 for the ISH group. So we had 156 public sector visits, 12 fatality and compliance visits, 359 private sector visits, and then there are 1,547 permitted amusement rides in the state of Kansas. Any questions about industrial safety and health?
Seeing none, moving on.
All right, thank you.
Labor market.
All right, labor market information services. So this is where, if you like numbers and want to nerd out, I invite you to come along with me. I love people who monkey around with numbers. So the purpose of labor market information services is really to provide timely and accurate information to small businesses, yourselves, policymakers, educators, and job seekers to understand the Kansas workforce and economic conditions. So they collect and they analyze and they disseminate all kinds of data, reports, surveys to employers and citizens of Kansas. So we're going to go through some of the reports that they publish either on a weekly, a monthly, or an annually basis. And then, of course, one of the main things that they do is they do partnership and outreach. And so with those partnerships, what they really are doing is conveying, again, the forecasting of the economic conditions for the state of Kansas. One of the biggest things that our LMIS team does is it's called the OEWS survey, the Occupational Employment and Wage Statistics Survey. And so what they do is every 3 years, they have a sampling of a variety of businesses within the state of Kansas. So they have big businesses, medium, small, a variety of different activities that these businesses do. And they go through and they ask, how many employees do you have? What are their titles? And what do they make? And so what do they do with this information? This information is integral to understanding the economy of Kansas. Because what it does, and you can see through this graphic here, is that the employers are going to fill this survey out. We're going to collect, analyze, and disseminate all of this information. But then we're going to provide it to schools. And the schools are going to develop their curricula to prepare students for the workforce. And so then these students go and they study and they get a job, and then the cycle starts over again. So of all the studies and surveys that we do at the Department of Labor, this is probably our most critical. And so what you'll see are some reports that are derived from this survey. So right now, you can see up here, this is the long-term industry and occupational employment projections. Again, just projecting what's going to be happening within the state of Kansas. We have high demand occupations list. So what a high demand occupation is one that is considered high demand if that median salary, that median wage, is higher than the median wage of all the other occupations in that area. And so where this is really important is because this information is vital for our education partners in order for them to develop those curricula so that our students are prepared to be participating members of the Kansas workforce. So we have these high demand occupations not only for 2 years, but also for 10 years. And then each month, you probably see this, our monthly labor report. So this reports the unemployment rate within the state. And so you can see online, we have this available in a dashboard form and also in a economical statistical form, all of the information that you'll need about what the snapshot of the Kansas economy is each month. And Friday will be the day in which the December 2024 labor report comes out, so stay tuned. We also create publications, so some of these are seen here. One that we're really proud of, it's called Today's Occupations, and what that is are those high demand, high wage occupations in Kansas that don't require a bachelor's degree. So this will go in there and it'll show you all of the things that you need now, in the future, and then later in your career for these occupations. We do some annual reports. We just released the Kansas 2024 economic report. Excuse me, and then we do some monthly spotlights. We have 2 examples here. Some of them we do for fun. So during the holiday season, for example, we have the one on the top right that showed, candy makers and chocolate makers and, all the information that you might need if you're interested in becoming something like that. But then also we have some STEM information. So what does that look like in terms of demographics for the state of Kansas? What are the average wages for people in STEM occupations? All this information are on some of our monthly spotlights. And then lastly, we've developed these career posters. And we have printed out and distributed to, there's a little typo here, all 287 school districts. We printed out career posters that show the students what you need to manage and develop your career. So you can see what you'll be making now as an IT help desk employee. And then there's the next phase, what your options are, what you'll be making through there. And of course, as their career matures, some of the maximum wages that they could have here in the state of Kansas. And then over on the right-hand side, we have what we call the STEM elemental table. So it's like the periodic table of elements, but it's for occupations in STEM. One thing that we're about ready to roll out, and we're very excited about it, it's called Today's occupations, tomorrow's opportunities. Toto. So this new Toto is going to be the successor of what some of you might remember as the Career Navigator. And so I will go in here just briefly. So what some of the components of Toto are. So it's really a learning and exploration resource for students. So they can go out, what are they interested in? How would that be directly related to an occupation that I would be interested in? But what really sets this tool apart is that students can go in and have a lifestyle projector. So say they go in and they say, I want to live in a house, or do I want to live in an apartment? Do I want to drive a Mercedes, or do I want to drive a Yugo? Am I going to have internet? Am I going to have my nice fancy clothes, or am I going to be a thrifter? And it'll go in and it'll determine the lifestyle that you want with your wants and needs, and determine what your annual wages or wages should be. And then you can go in and we take you directly to some career resources where students can see what types of jobs they need to meet their wants and needs that they have determined. So we would be happy, chairs, to come back after we release the Toto website and do a demonstration. I'm very proud of it. It is pretty cool. So again, before I move on, anything about labor market? All right, so then the last topic I'm going to cover is labor relations. Basically, as an agency, we are responsible for enforcement of wage laws, workers' rights protection, human and labor trafficking. It's actually Human Trafficking Awareness Month, so we're doing an entire campaign on labor trafficking, and then regulations of work hours. And so there are some laws here that we've listed that are specific for the state of Kansas, in addition to some federal laws that we help enforce. And of course, all of these fundamentals of labor relations are in concert and coordination with the U.S. Department of Labor. And with that, Mr. Chair, that concludes the topics about the agency. I would like to do just one more quick topic. We have asked for some legislation through Senate Judiciary. I believe it's Senate Bill 30 now. So basically what it does is it authorizes us as the agency to conduct fingerprints, to participate in the U.S. Treasury Offset Program. We've worked with KBI very closely on this, and they're very supportive of this language, and wanted to bring that to your attention in case you had any questions. And with that, this is our usual follow-up slide. We have our elected official and staff support, Julie McGaney, Director of Government Affairs. She's fantastic, always willing to help, and so her contact information is up there if you need to get a hold of her.
Thank you very much for your report. I do have one question on your Kansas monthly labor report. It looks like to me that if the total numbers are low over 1.5 million people that are working or unemployed, is that typical? We have about 3 million in the state, or about 50%. Is that typical?
Right, so the labor force participation rate is, about 66%, and that is very typical. For the U.S., it's actually 62.5%, and so that could be some people, obviously children, anybody under 14 or 16 would not be counted. Anybody that obviously would be a full-time student or, have made the choice to stay home, they would not be considered part of the labor force. So that labor force participation rate is really what you want to be focused on.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you. We will go ahead and tell you what we have for tomorrow. Wednesday, we have the Department of Commerce. It will be a joint meeting in this room. On Thursday, we have legislative post-audit. And then I think we have a 27th, we have an economic outlook of Kansas on the 27th. So those are joint meetings. Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an announcement about this coming Friday. The Senate, this is just for the House members. We will be meeting, we have a meeting on call, the chair right now, but we will be meeting Friday for a presentation on junior achievement and 2 bill hearings. And so you'll get that information later today. Just wanted to let you know we will be here Friday. Sorry for that short notice, but we have a short session, so we got to get some stuff done. Thanks.
Seeing nothing else, we are dismissed.